Okay, well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Uh, just to make sure you're in the right place, we're here for the HDIUT Data Submittal Workshop. I'm Christian Bartolome. I'll be moderating today's workshop meeting, and we have two excellent presenters for you today, Abraham Lee and Stephen Chow. Before we get into the presentations, first I'd like to talk about a few logistics for today's Zoom webinar meeting. So the workshop will be recorded and it will be available on CARB's website probably next week. Although most of us here are joining by Zoom application, either on our phones or on our computers, there is a way to call in, and the telephone number and access code are shown on the screen, if that may be useful to you. At the end of our presentations, we'll have our Q&A. Within the Zoom app, there's two main methods for asking questions. The first is the raise hand feature. So in the bottom right of your Zoom, in the bottom toolbar of your Zoom interface, there should be a little hand figure, and you can raise your hand. And doing this during the Q&A will allow us to see that you've raised your hand. And at that point, I could call on you, indicate that you can unmute yourself, and then you can ask your question verbally. The other option to ask questions is use a Q&A box. So in the bottom of your Zoom interface, there's a Q&A feature, and you can ask questions, and then we can get to them. If you are calling in by phone, the way to ask questions is to use #2 to raise your hand, and you can press *6 to unmute or mute yourself if that's needed. We ask that you please state your name and affiliation before asking a question or making a comment. Okay, that's it for the logistics. So I would like to pass it off to our first presenter, or one of our presenters, Abraham Lee, to go over the objectives.
Thank you, Christian. Hello, thank you for joining today's workshop. My name is Abraham Lee. I'm heavy-duty in-use compliance section staff, leading the manufacturer-run heavy-duty in-use testing HDIUT program oversight, including HDIUT data submittal and data review. The objectives of today's workshop are first, to introduce a new web-based HDIUT data submittal methodology using HDIUT Manufacturer Submit HMS system, through which heavy-duty engine manufacturers need to submit their HDIUT data starting from July 1st, 2024. Since this is a new methodology, although the new submittal process are quite simple, CARB offers CARB step-assisted submission option until December 31st, 2024, which will be explained during the presentation. The second objective is to provide step-by-step guidance of those new submittal processes, how to submit HDI data through HMS, including registration process to get the access to the HMS system, HDI data file submittal and validation process, and what kinds of notification OEMs would get during or after those submittal and validation processes. Then we'll have Q&As. Now, my colleague Stephen Chow will first introduce the new HDIUT data submittal methodology, along with how to get an access to the HMS system, and brief background and information about HDIUT program and data submittal. Stephen?
Thank you, Abraham. Hello, my name is Stephen Chow, and I'm also in the heavy-duty in-use compliance section of the in-use programs branch. So briefly, let's first look at some background information about the in-use testing program. Manufacturer-run in-use testing program for heavy-duty diesel engines began in 2007, following a 2-year pilot period. According to 40 CFR 86/1920, titled "What In-Use testing information must I report to EPA, and the EPA guidance document CISD 06011. Each manufacturer must report HDIUT data, information, and results to EPA and CARB. Currently, manufacturers submit their data to EPA through their web submittal system, EVCIS, and submit data to CARB via some form of electronic media by mail or by email as attachments. Next slide, please. The California Air Resources Board has established a new HDIUT reporting and validation system similar to EPA's EVCIS and CARB e-file. It is a web-based reporting system with data validation in place. Abraham will elaborate on this later. Starting July 1st, 2024, the new HDIUT data for 2023 and later test orders should be submitted through HMS, either directly by manufacturers or CARB-assisted submission until the end of the year, which entails the OEM submitting the data via old methodology and CARB submitting the data through HMS on behalf of the OEMs, and then and correcting any errors of the submission by coordinating with the OEMs. Next slide, please. Now let's go over generally steps in an initiation of an initial submission. Each manufacturer would send CARB an HMS account request letter first. Once CARB receives and processes the request letter, each person listed as account holders will receive 2 registration emails. After following the registration process provided in the emails, the accounts would then be approved by CARB staff and manufacturer would be notified by email. The account holders are then able to submit HDIUT data through the HMS portal. The system will notify the uploader via email of successful or unsuccessful submissions. If the submitted HDIUT data contains errors, an email will be sent with listing all the errors. You would just then address the errors contained in the email and resubmit. Next slide, please. Now to go over how to acquire an account in detail. So on the right side, we see a sample account request letter. So you would send this to CARB, addressing it to Tom Montes, our branch chief. Attention HMS accounts. The letter should contain up to 3 account holders, for each manufacturer with their name, title, and contact information. Details, further details can be found on the mail out sent in late May, reference number reference ECCD 2024-06. And it's also linked in the how to use HMS webpage. Next slide, please. Now here are screenshots of the 2 registration emails. The first one on the right is to register the account holder's identity through a third-party contractor, Okta, and identity management solutions company. handling passwords and identity verification. And the second registration email shown on the right is for registering with CARB's web application. Next slide, please. Once you've followed all the registration processes outlined in the emails and through each of the web apps, your account will be then approved by CARB staff, and you will finally receive an approval email, which is shown on this slide. Next slide, please. So we've gone over a brief overview of an initial submission and took a closer look at the registration process. Now I'll hand it back to Abraham to give more detailed guidance on file submission through HMS. Abraham.
Thank you, Stephen. Next slide, please. So once you have an access to the HMS portal and logged in, you will see this front page, which showing that home and welcome message on the top, like welcome Abraham Lee for me. And as you can see in the right-hand side, I said that the welcome John Doe. And then there is two sentences showing that verbatim in the right-hand side. So basically, you need to follow HMS requirement, which I'll explain next slide. And then also mentioning that you would receive two sets of email for the file submission and data validation. Next slide, please. Then you click on the requirement in the left-hand side. You will see ended up in this page. Basically, this page showing the requirement for the two things. One is the number of data file you need to submit, and then another thing is the file naming convention. So for a test, with the test vehicle or engine, you need to have only one XML file and only one engine map file. But depending on the testing, you can have multiple owners file, one or more than two. And then also you can submit the optional supplement files such as maintenance record. And for the file naming convention will be shown in the next slide in detail. As you can see on the right corner, there is details, which is also shown in that the website. And then I showed a part of them. And as you can see on the top of the text, there is this is a general format of the file naming. So first thing is the manufacturer code, which is a 3-digit code, as in the example like a GCX, which is artificial. But I mean, manufacturer, you know what is the manufacturer code, the assigned by EPA. And the next thing is the application name. In this case, HDIUT as in the detail, and then in the example. And also next one is the test order year. As in the example, test order abbreviated as TO and 2024, for example. And next one is test engine family name, which that is also artificial one, but I mean, whatever the engine family you tested, that should be there. And the next item is data file type. As you can see in the detail in the middle, so XML file, you need to write as XML. For the engine map file, you need to say EM. And for 1 Hertz file, you need to use 1 Hertz at 1 HG. And other supplemental file use SUPP. And afterward, you can put test ID, whatever your choice. There's an example like ABC1234 underscore AB or whatever the manufacturer choose. And then last one is extension. You need to be careful about the extension. And yeah, as in the detail, the for XML file, obviously it'll be XML. And then engine map and 1 Hertz file, it should be in the format of CSV. And the supplement file, all of them need to be used PDF. And in the slide, I put some file naming example. For first example is for the one XML, obviously, and one engine map file, and then with only one owners and one supplemental file, which is gonna be the most case. So like that. But when you have multiple owners file and then multiple supplement file, you can put a number after the 1 hertz and SUPP supplemental. So 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever fit to the number of the files. Next slide, please. So next, now if you have those files ready with the following those naming convention, you are ready to go to the upload those files. So you can click on the upload in the left, and then you can show up coming into the NT upload file. So, and then when you start, click the start upload button in the bottom, you can start upload. But before doing that, I need to make sure a couple of things. Next slide, please. So in the README, there is several things you need to read first. In there, 1 through 6 is for the data submittal, and then 7 and 8 is for the data validation notes. And then another thing I want to point out here is that you need to select the data version, which I'll explain a little bit later. But I mean, when you click on the right-hand side in the arrow button, you can have selection for those version. Next slide, please. So in this slide, I show that the first 6 slides are related to the uploading data. First, number 1 is read and follow requirement, which I explained already. And the second thing you need to do is that, as I mentioned in the previous slide, data version, you need to select either original or revision by clicking on that arrow button on there, right, in the slide right now. And after selecting that, click the start button. Then it'll be grayed out, and then you can start to upload the file in that the location, or by dragging files or clicking the select file, and then you select file from that option. And then please, number 4, upload 1 file at a time. And then number 5, once the file have been uploaded, they cannot be limited. Please remember, if you have some error, what you need to do is that cancel upload button so you can start over. But once you have successfully uploaded all the file, number 6, then you click complete button. Otherwise, your file will not be processed and any uploaded file will be deleted from the system. Again, please note that you need to click cancel button if you have any mistake. Next slide, please. So this slide shows that the example of a successful and submission. So when you see the left-hand side, when the first thing is that when you first upload the first file, you'll see showing like that way with the green, and then also on the file names there with a green color. And when you do the same thing, and then in this case, and another example in left-hand side, the 4 files, then you see all 5, and then still you see that the grid. And then you click the complete button if that's the only file, 4 files are the data you want to submit for one test. Then you will get an HMS notification at the website, and it says that your file had been uploaded successfully. In addition to that, you're gonna get a email notification. It's saying they received 4 files, and then showing that the file names, and then also file location numbers. Next slide, please. But when, unfortunately, you have some error in your file submission, first of all, in the left-hand side, if there is a error in naming convention, then you would see that the error message is starting with invalid file naming convention and saying that the file name. So, and then you can see in that the red color in that the submission part, and also in the file has error showing that the red color. In the also you can have some other kind of errors. For example, as is shown in the right hand side, if you submit a fewer file than required, for example, you missed the XML file, for example, then you could get an error message of saying error, missing required file. Please read HMS requirements. Also, when you have like error in the left-hand side, the screenshot, but start to try to complete that, try to submit those data with error. So which means you click the complete button, you'd get an error message in the bottom there. Error, problem with the finalizing file. Please contact admin. So whenever you have a error message and then the file's something wrong, then please remember to click the cancel upload button and start over your submission from the beginning. Next slide, please. Now, after you successfully submit, you got the email notification as well as the HMS website notification. Then the system, as mentioned in the slide 14, 7 and 8 notes will taking place, which means basically those HDIUT data files successfully submitted will be going for the validation process. So that validation process is following the EPA's published data requirement for in-use testing. Right now, the current one is April 2024 version. So following that guidance requirement, the validation system will process and then tell that there is any error or not. In that the slide, I show some example of error when during that validation checks. First thing is that typographical error. For example, some manufacturer put the test date of selection date for wrong data instead of the EPA letter, the data shown in the EPA letter. Another type of errors is missing data or information when required. So not for the optional, but I mean required data, you need to submit that. But I mean, if there is a missing those data, it'll the system gonna show you the error message. For example, CHF concentration and zero span and or drift value missing when CH4 measurement is indicated. When CH4 measurement is indicated, you need to submit those data. If those data are not there, then validation system gonna give error message. But if that's the optional, then there's no need to put those values. And another thing is wrong invalid formats. So it's checking the format. For example, engine manufacturer diagnostic EMD code or OBD-DTC indicator. During the testing, should we say Y or N? But if you put that one in 0 or 1, sometimes I found that kind of the data input, then the system gonna give you the error message. And another thing, for example, as a regeneration signal, which has recently changed. Now it should be 0, 1, or 2. And then when those signals are not available, up -1. But if you put that on instead of those numbers, you put Y or N, the system gonna give the error message. Next slide, please. So in this slide, I show the two different sets of two different emails. First one, when that validation is successful, you'd get an email saying that on the title accepted, and also in the middle of the content is said accepted. But when you have any errors, you'll have another email saying that unsuccessful notification with saying rejected on the title, and then also rejected in the content. And in this case, there's a number of errors of those files. shown in that the email contents. And then also the error is actually described in that the email. And then at the bottom, it says a message saying that fix the error and then resubmit those files. And then also those errors is separately attached into the email in a text file. One thing I want to mention here is that to the email address for this validation notification is used from the XML the file, not from whoever submitter through that HMS account. So what I'm saying is, when you somebody access HMS and then submit those data, you got the email about successful submission of data, but this notification email is sent to whoever whose email account is in the XML file. If you have any question, yeah, I'll happy to answer the question later on. Next slide, please. So, and then also I added a few actual the error message you can find. Hopefully you do not have this thing, but I mean, this is some example or I can what you can find. So in XML file, the first error message says a parsing error in the XML file and problem is found in the XYGG star tag one line. And that specific error message is basically when the specific data element is showing up in the XML, starting with the greater than sign, but without having the less than sign at the end, which is there is no end tag, then you say that parsing error. And the second example in XML file error message is that first character of test engine family name does not follow the model year. So our system has cross-check function with the model year of the engine family. So when you type something wrong with the engine family model year versus test engine family name, then it'll give you error message like that. And another one is the like a code history indicator is set as Y, therefore device code identifier is required. So something is set, I mean, EMD code history saying yes, that means in the XML file there should be some EMD code there, but if those data are missing, in that you would get this kind of error message. In the OneWorks file, for example, if there is some required data is missing, then it will show like this. For example, THC underscore dry underscore to underscore wet underscore correction. So basically THC dry to wet correction data is required in OneWorks file and cannot be empty. And for EMD code, for example, in the wrong format, like 01 instead of YMN, then it's the error message is going to say like in this way, EMD underscore code underscore set should be Y or N, and in low number X2, XX, XXX, which is in that low in that OneWorks CSV file. Similarly, if you have region signal is in the wrong format, then it will say like region underscore signal should be -1 to 2 in low number YYY2, YYYY. Again, in that low number showing that where those error, the wrong formatted data are located. And also in all or part of 3 files required, you can get this kind of error message when there is such thing really happen. Test selection date in OneWorks file does not match with the XML file. In OneWorks file, value is 2019 MMDD, but in XML file, it is 2018 MMDD. So there is a mismatch between the XML file and the OneWorks file of the test selection date by one number. Instead of 2019, put that in a XML 2018, then the system will catch it and then give the error message. Next slide, please. So this is a summary slide. Starting from July 1st, 2024, OEMs submit their HDIT data files directly through HMS for 2023 and later test of the HDIT data files. Both original first submission or revised submission, if you have any revision happening, or until December 31st, 2024, you can use our CARB assistance submission methodology. Basically, OEM send us to those data file, then we're gonna put them through the HMS. And then if we got any error message from the HMS, we'll get back to OEM, and then OEM fix those error and then send us the data back. And then we put the those corrected data by through the HMS, and then do the same process again until there is a successful submission message is received. And for 2020 and earlier test of the HDIT data, use the old methodology, sending us the file through the electronic media or email attachment. And upon successful submission and data validation, OEM received 2 sets of notification at HMS and or via email. Upon successful submission, but when there is an error, you could get an error message in that HMS, and also when validation failed, you could get an email notification with error described. So any cases, OEM need to correct those errors and then resubmit HDIT data files. Next slide, please. So these are contact information. If you have any question about new HDIUT data file submittal and then validation, contact us, our section email, hd-inuse@alb.ca.gov. And also this presentation slide are available at our website, how to use HMS. And if you have any question regarding HDIT program, please contact us section with the section email or our branch chief, Thomas Montes, in that email, and then also me at that email address. And that's it. And if you have any question, we are happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Abraham. Thank you, Stephen, for explaining us kind of the history and the process to submitting HDIUT data. Now's the time to ask questions. As I mentioned before, you can ask questions through the Q&A feature or use the raise hand options. It looks like we have already some written questions and raised hands, and we'll get to those as the rest of the audience can begin typing in their questions. First, we'll go to the question from Ryan Barlett. How quickly will the validation notification be sent after the submission of data? And I believe Abraham wanted to answer that one.
Yes, thank you for the question. It depending on the system processing speed, but I would say that it's about 15 minutes or so. Or the Dilip's group, could you chime in and then say a little bit more if I missed something?
No, it should be around 15 to 30 minutes. They should get a notification.
Thank you.
Thanks. We have a hand raised from Steve Flores. I'm gonna allow you to talk, Steve, and you can unmute and ask questions. Steve, you could unmute yourself and ask questions if you like. Well, we can get back to you, Steve, if you're having technical difficulties. Who's here? We had another hand raised for a verbal question. I see they dropped their hand. If you'd like to ask a question, uh, everyone is welcome to do so using either the Q&A text box or asking verbally with the raise hand feature. So we'll wait for more questions. Oh, we have a question from Loan Harding. If my fleet is not registered for California road, does this regulation apply? I believe Dilip wanted to answer this. Dilip, could you please, instead of typing answer, maybe give a verbal response?
This is Abraham. I think Dilip typed the answer for the previous question. How long it will take? I'll answer the question from Luan. I'm sorry if I spoken your name. No, this is not for the fleet. This is for the OEMs. So this is when only this is not for the fleet or any truck drivers thing. This is the OEM when they do require the testing with the PAMs. So basically, this regulation is, I mean, not a regulation. This process is not applicable to the fleet.
Oh, I see. Thanks, Abraham. And when you say the OEM, that means like the engine manufacturers, right?
That's correct. Engine manufacturer for the heavy-duty diesel engine manufacturer who receive the test order from CARB and EPA. So if you don't receive those kind of test order, you are not subject to do anything.
Thank you.
In-use testing compliance program.
Dilip, could you repeat it again?
It's basically for the heavy duty in-use. I'm just quickly looking it up on the website. In-use testing compliance program.
Yeah, this is different from like INM. So this is subject to only the heavy-duty engine manufacturer. Can I answer the next question
Sure.
from Michael?
Yeah, sure.
So,
the next question is from Michael Obermiller. Just for clarification, the fleet manager does not need a HMS account. Go ahead, Abraham.
short answer is no. No, you don't need to. Only again, this is for the OEM, not the fleet at all, or truck driver.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Kevin McDuff. Will the validation system be updated each time the EPA updates the published data requirements? I believe Abraham wanted to speak to that one.
Yes, so when that the EPA system is updated, we're gonna update our system as well. But the time it depends on what kind of change over there. But we will work with OEMs during the time of the transition. Dilip's group, do you want to add anything on that question? I guess, yeah, that is.
Give a lead time of a month or so to implement those changes. And those changes, that means we have to implement the changes on the system requirements. So it takes some time also. and depends on the database changes, but the same is true for US EPA too.
Thank you, Dilip. Yes, we also talking with the EPA as well, so we would know probably beforehand. So we're gonna make that change as soon as possible. But if there is any problem or difficulty during the transition, our staff gonna work with the OEM directly.
Thanks, Abraham. Thanks, Dilip. We don't have any new questions yet in the queue. So well, this is indeed a new process, and the users or the manufacturers who are using this HMS probably need to get their hands on it for more detailed questions. It's just as a reminder, we have the contact information on the screen here. Like at that time, they may use the HDIUT email address or contact Abraham or Tom for further information on that. So we'll continue waiting if there's any questions here in the chat or raised hand. Okay, we are not receiving any new questions or anyone raising their hand. I think we can close today's workshop. I just want to thank everyone for coming today and thank our speakers, Abraham Lee and Stephen Chow, for giving us the presentation and the instructions on this new submission format. Abraham and Stephen, did you guys have any other final notes before we close the workshop? It doesn't seem like we have any more questions at this time.
No, we're good. Thank you, Christian. So also, if you have any questions, as Christian already said, please contact us, and we can answer your question or work with you directly. Thank you.
Right, nothing from me. Yeah, please feel free to contact us. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.